Hello and welcome to the Fresh Air Sci-Fi Show. I'm Joe.
And I'm the guy that was on mute.
And I hope everybody enjoyed that mix. But yeah, so today we're carrying on with our sort of Thursday, what's it called? Article reading. So what we're trying to do on Thursday is we're either going to review a site, a video, or read one of our articles out. We have been thinking about different ones to do, and from a lot of the conversations that we've been having recently, there have been people who, well, probably haven't listened to our discussions about discussions. And we felt that maybe we should focus on something a little bit more specific. Rather than just having a good discussion, we're going to talk about having a way to change someone's mind. Now, Dave has an article. You wrote it how long ago?
I just had a look, and believe it or not, it was 5 years ago.
Was that when you published it on AiR, or is that when you actually wrote it?
That will have been when I published it on AiR.
So you probably wrote that a few times before that, there.
A couple of years before that, probably, yeah. But it shows you how long I've been harping on about this.
Yeah. I think that article was actually an article that changed my mind about you. So your article about changing a mind changed my mind. So hopefully it'll change some minds of other people out there about how to change a mind. I still see so many argumentative people throwing out statements and just getting angry, and it's insulting, and I think it's just a little bit frustrating for me to watch that, and I do find that I get caught up in that sometimes as well. So the idea is that, you know, Dave's going to run through his article, and we're going to hone in on some of the bits from it that you probably wouldn't get just from reading an article. So Dave, did you want to get things loaded up, and I'll put ourselves into Be Right Back briefly?
Yeah, hang on 2 seconds.
What am I gonna do today, man? Oh, give a article. He always has some great ideas for what to do.
Yeah, if you hit F11 as well.
Hey, yo, pod, what's up, man?
Yeah, man, what you saying, bro?
Yeah, how's it going, bro? How you feeling? Safe, me too, man, me too. I'm so bored out of my mind, though. We gotta hook up. Wait, what happened to you yesterday, man? I thought you were coming round.
I didn't do nothing much, but you wanna know what I done yesterday? I'll rap that shit to you right now.
Better?
You know what, open my eyes and what do I see? It's a big Jimmy Bifter staring back at me. I put it to my lips and the taste is sweet, and I heard my brothers rocking out to this beat. I closed my eyes, then rose from my seat, and I had to venture forth to find some munch to eat.
So tonight we're actually going to try something different as well. It's not going to be me talking for hours on end. You're going to hear a different voice for a little while, and I'm going to do my best to actually let Dave get through it. But as we know, I can't shut up, so I'll probably be interrupting constantly, but I'll do my best to keep my lips sealed.
Okay. Should I read the whole thing out? Yeah, probably best. It's actually quite a short article, which makes a change for me. It's not pages and pages. It's probably about 1,000 words, 1,500 words, which to me is normally about how many words I use to ask Emma if she wants a cup of tea. Okay. Introduction. For those atheists that discuss and debate religion, we should ask ourselves what the purpose behind it is. What do we do the things we do? Why do we do the things we do? For the Christian evangelist or the Muslim performing dawah, this is a simple question to answer. They do it because they are attempting to spread their religion. They believe their way is the way, and their religion teaches them that they should be spreading their religion. What of the atheists, though? We have no such doctrine, and we have no doctrine at all. Yet it is common, especially in this modern era, to find atheists discussing and debating religion. So we should ask ourselves why we attempt to discuss religion with the believer. Is the purpose simply to mock those that do not think like us? Or is the purpose something more? Is the purpose to change minds? And I think when it comes to it, you hear a lot of them say, well, I want to convince them to not believe. I think believing is stupid. We need to change this. So I think for a lot of them, the purpose is to actually change people's minds, regardless of what they say.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think many actually do have these discussions, as you say, with the purpose to change minds. Or at least on a larger scale, they're saying they don't want religion in their society. They don't want religion influencing their society. To get religion not influencing their society, what do they need to do? Well, they need to change the minds of the people and all of that sort of thing. So don't get me wrong, though. There are a couple of people recently who did admit to me openly on Twitter that they're either there to ridicule theists, not to actually change minds, they're just making fun of them, or just to let off steam by ridiculing theists. So, I mean, those sorts of people, I do wonder. But even with one of them, they still said that they felt very harmed by religion and they don't want it in their society anymore. So I found that strange that they didn't want to actually take a proactive sort of thing to change people's minds and try and do it. They were so determined that you can't change people's minds on places like Twitter that they were just going to make fun of people. But then it's just going to reinforce a stereotype. And fair enough, you're not trying to change a mind right now, but you do want their mind changed. But what you're doing is going to get them defensive. And the next time someone tries to approach them and change their mind, they might just reject what they say completely.
Yeah, they'll just go straight into fight mode.
Exactly. Philip, yes, you do know exactly who I'm talking about. I try not to name names on the stream, though, but feel free to do it if you want.
Okay. So it is common to find atheists in debate groups, especially amongst those that act like echo chambers for atheist thought, using the phrase ridiculous beliefs deserve ridicule. There are many who seem to be content to insult and mock the believer because they hold the idea that the theist has ridiculous beliefs. This is similar to what you were saying. What of the theist, though? There are many who hold the idea that the atheist has ridiculous beliefs. We often see attempts from various theists to mock the non-believer, not just the atheist, but those that hold a different religion. So does their belief that others hold ridiculous beliefs entitle them to ridicule those beliefs, as the statement implies? The atheists who hold to this idea justify their actions by claims of atheism being logical, reasonable, and rational. Yet the believer holds that their belief are these things too. Each group believes that they are the ones with the correct beliefs, the rational beliefs, the logical beliefs. What does ridicule achieve, though? Ridiculing can be used to bully people into conformity, of course. Is that all we as atheists want, though? For those that do not believe to simply conform to our ideas, how does that make us any different from those believers that simply want us to conform to their ideas? If our goal is to attempt to promote rationality and reason and logic, then surely we want more than simple conformity. Surely we should want more than simply to look good or look clever amongst our peers and those that are in our in-group. And that seems to be what a lot of the stuff that goes on, it's how it appears to me. It's just people appealing to the in-group. Oh, look at how clever I am. Look at how cool I am that I can put all these people down. Ha, laugh at the stupid people.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you there. There is a lot that you see online with that sort of getting the pat on the back. It's an ego boost, isn't it? It's look at me.
Look at how smart I am. Look, I can make fun of the believers.
Yeah.
Yeah. It doesn't really do very much. I mean,
even ridiculing someone into conformity might make them conform, but not actually change their belief. And when they're not around you, they are not going to conform.
And they'll find out other people who think like them and are only putting on the pretense of conforming, gather together, gather strength, and then storm the Capitol.
Yeah. Relevant.
Basically. Yeah. I try to be occasionally. Okay. Unless those are our goals, then of course we should want more. In order to achieve more, though, we must understand what it takes to change a person's mind. We also must understand why it is people believe in religion, beyond memes such as too stupid to understand science. We need to understand why people believe their God exists and their religion, beyond the simple answer of indoctrination. One of my colleagues here that I spelt wrong, it's been there for years with that mistake. How could I? One of my colleagues here at Answers in Reason presented an article into The Science of Belief, which you can read here at your own leisure.
That was Alan's, wasn't it?
I think so, yeah. In fact, I think it came up somewhere as well recently.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and I can't remember where.
It's not important.
No, but it was interesting to see it outside of our context. Like I think I saw it on a YouTube video or something.
Oh, really?
As being cited, yeah, and I can't remember where now. We already face an uphill battle when it comes to the believer changing their mind, especially in cases of religions like Islam, in which it is taught that it is perfect and beyond reproach and that it cannot be wrong. If our goal is to change their minds, then we must understand at least the bare minimum of what it takes to change a mind, and the approaches necessary in order to change a mind. In this article, we will attempt to discuss some of the various approaches and ideas put forward about changing someone's mind. So what does it take to change a person's mind?
Does it, Dave? Can't leave us hanging on that. That's just like a cliffhanger.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I've got to go now. Bye. Just to add some, excitement and tension.
I should have got the samples ready and then...
The ticking noise. Dun, 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 dun. And then everybody just go make a cup of tea. Okay, so when it comes to changing a person's mind, there's obviously a lot more that goes into it than just simple respect. The person has to feel that you know what you're talking about. You have to know what you're talking about, at least to a certain degree.
Mm-hmm.
But as I'll go on to explain here, if the person who is talking to you doesn't at least have the bare minimum of respect for you, they won't even begin to listen to you. So respect is sort of the starting point.
Yeah. Yeah, no, you're right. It's definitely the starting point. I think it's that building a rapport is one of the most important things. If we go back just for a second, I hope I don't actually say something you're going to say in the rest of the article, because it's been a few years since I've read it myself. But if you've got a good rapport with someone and you respect someone, then ridicule can actually be effective in that circumstance. Because if you were to say to me, Joe, you're being a fucking idiot, I'd go, shit, I know Dave knows what he's going on about. He knows about this particular topic. He's a friend. I respect him. We have lots of good conversations. So maybe I should listen to him. But the same, if some random on the internet over the same topic turned around to me and went, you're a fucking idiot, I'd probably just brush them off as someone, being willfully ignorant about the topic I'm discussing and not knowing what they're talking about. If it's something I'm already a little bit unsure about, I might turn around and try and find a couple of peers and go, am I right in my thinking, or should I change what I'm doing? But in general, when I'm confident in a position, ridicule will not work. And you have to think about the average theist is very confident in their belief in God. A lot of them claim to not only believe, but know that their God exists. So it's going to take a hell of a lot for you to be able to convince them of something else.
Yeah. And especially if you think of something like, say, Islam, where it's taught that everything is perfect, nothing can be changed because it's been like that since time immemorial. They're the ones with the right idea. Every other religion is wrong. Not just wrong, but there's a certain level of purity that comes in Islam that isn't quite there in other religions. And they're also taught that those outside of Islam want them to not believe. They'll ridicule them and persecute them, and they should take it and stand strong in the name of Allah. That kind of stuff. So really, all you're doing when you're mocking somebody like that is reinforcing the idea that they're right. Unless, of course, you have the rapport with them.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So the first step towards the acquisition of knowledge, of course, is an interest in the topic at hand. If we are not interested in the topic, then we will rarely seek out the knowledge. Sometimes it is curiosity, other times it is necessity, but it is usually some kind of interest that begins our journey. The reason behind our interest is often a factor in what information we seek out, or what information we accept as well. If we are simply interested in debunking an idea, often we will seek out that particular information. The same is true of the opposite as well. We will seek the information that supports the idea that we were interested in. However, interest is only the beginning of the journey. It is what leads us to begin our acquisition of information and knowledge, and not the deciding factor on where and who we get our information from. And it sort of rings true that if you're not interested in something, chances are you're not going to go and look it up. And even in the case of like debunking a religious claim, like debunking the Kalam, people will generally just give it the most cursory glance. They won't look at the arguments for it. They'll look at the arguments from popular YouTubers and go to their videos and listen to them. And because they're only interested in the debunking part.
Yeah, no, that's fair enough. It's actually like that came at one of the questions from Trinity Radio's 10 Questions for Atheists, and they actually said, what authors have you actually read, like from Christian theology? And even then, I said it's been probably 20 years since I've actually read a book on religion, and it wasn't even looking into Christian religion then myself. I know you have for your coursework doing your philosophy degrees, because philosophy of religion has been part of it, so it's made sense for you to. But obviously I spent a lot of time originally looking into things, and I've become quite apathetic towards the whole sort of theistic debate myself. So one, I try not to actually get into it that much anymore, and two, I don't care enough to spend 40-50 quid on a book about something that is supporting a religion which I can poke so many holes in already. So why would I get into that? Don't get me wrong, if a theist was to present me a new argument that I hadn't heard and I found it very interesting, I'd engage it, I'd do my best to research it. I wouldn't just go and look for the debunk of their argument. I'd try and think about it myself and look for things that support and go against it. But I'm not going to go out there anymore and spend that much money on a book from someone supporting a religion that clearly has many holes in it and you just need apologetics to support it.
Yeah, makes sense. Like you said, I've looked into this stuff because of my degrees and whatnot. Outside of that, there are philosophy of religion books that I've read, but they're not specifically Christian or anything like that.
Yeah, and I do find the philosophy of religion as a general topic quite interesting. It's when you get more into theology, looking at a specific religion and arguing for a particular deity, but it, with all the claims about a particular deity, like we justified on Tuesday why we don't believe in gods in general, there's all of those arguments there, and I can't imagine that there is a decent argument against a lot of them, because if they did, when I presented that particular argument, a theist would come up and give me that argument against it, and they don't.
Yeah. And the next bit sort of leads on to this a little bit. It is often respected as a major contributing factor in who we listen to. Or if we do not respect the person, or at the very least their grasp of the topic they are speaking on, then we will reject the information that they present us. We can often not respect the person giving us the information, but if we respect their authority on the subject, then we will still listen to what that person has to say on the subject, even if we dismiss their opinions on other subjects. So, taking this as an example, if you were going to have a discussion about, say, the evil God argument, you're more likely to go and look at somebody like Stephen Law than you are somebody like, I don't know, William Lane Craig. I know he doesn't really do much with that, but, let's just take that as an example. You're going to go with the names that you know and the people who sort of espouse similar views and whose views you respect.
Mm-hmm.
Taking it to another extreme, consider the definition of atheism. Now, for people like us and people like who are watching us at the moment, and, Lord Bryant and Philip and Josh and Leon and everyone else, they're more likely to go to somebody like Graham Oppie or Paul Draper, somebody like that, to get their information on what atheism means and how it's used. And they're more likely to reject somebody like Aaron Ra or Godless Engineer.
Mm-hmm.
And for good reason,
Yeah,
just to throw that out.
For a good reason.
But the people who watch Aaron Ra, Matt Dillahunty, Godless
Randolph.
Engineer, people like that, Randolph, yeah, they're going to reject people like Oppie, Law, Draper, because they don't have any respect for them. As far as they're concerned, they're wrong because they're not saying the same things as Aaron Ra and Randolph and everybody else. So, respect for the person starts out as a contributing factor to whether or not you'll actually even begin to look at the information they're presenting.
Yeah, definitely. And I think the thing is, I with someone like Aaron Ra, when I had only heard his scientific arguments and his arguments against creationism, I had a lot of respect for him. And I wasn't aware of him where people like Alan and Chris, other authors of AiR, were, and then they actually went to see him. But when I listened to some of his opinions on science and how he changed his mind about different topics and things like that, I was like, oh wow, no, this guy is someone to look up to. And then I got into his epistemology, and it was and I lost all respect for him because of the way he acted and the way he debated. When I started watching debates and how angry and aggressive he was, and now I suppose I have a bias against him, whereas I might have had a slight bias towards him before only reading his science stuff.
That's it. And even though you've lost all respect for him in that kind of sense, you'll still listen to what he says on questions of science and things like that, because you have respect for his authority in that subject. You might not respect him in any other subject, but you know that he knows what he's talking about when it comes to certain subjects. And you will still, even though you have no respect for him, you will still grant him the audience because you respect his knowledge. Yeah.
Yeah, no, definitely.
Yeah. So again, it shows respect counts for a lot when it comes to actually changing somebody's mind, because whether it's respect for your knowledge or respect for you as a person, without either of that, nobody is actually going to listen to you.
Mm-hmm.
And so, as I go on to say, showing us that respect has much to do with our ability to change another's mind. Here is where the atheist faces something of a problem, though. The knowledge we have is not something that most believers have a genuine interest in. Most are not seeking to acquire knowledge of atheism, but instead to convince the atheist that the position they hold is incorrect. They are seeking to convert rather than be converted. They also do not have a respect for the average atheist authority on certain subjects. The authority that they respect as far as knowledge goes is their God and their scriptures. And, like other apologists and things like that. I was trying to keep the word count down, but you know me, once I get going, I just write pages and pages.
Yeah.
This is made even more difficult in cases such as Islam, in which it convinces the believer that the scripture cannot be wrong, and that the Muslim cannot be wrong if they are indeed following what is taught in the Quran. It creates an almighty, pun intended, bias in their thinking, one that is incredibly difficult to challenge.
Definitely.
And if you've ever had any discussions with, say, Muslims from places like Pakistan, there is a certain arrogance there that's a hard hurdle to get over. It's not an impossible challenge, though. What it means, another mistake, damn it, is that we must rely. What it means that we must rely on is their respect for us as people and as human beings. We could argue that it will never happen. This is true. After all, it is included in some scriptures that we are not to be respected, that we are only worthy of hellfire, that we are fools, and that the wise are the ones that follow the true religion, which usually tends to be the one that the particular believer is a member of. I know I'm being a bit hyperbolic here, but it's more just to stress a certain point to those reading it and those with the idea that, ridicule is all that's necessary. We should ridicule. However, this is not always the case. There are many that are willing to engage in dialogue and discussion. There are many that treat those who believe differently with respect, so long as they are worthy of respect, of course. They generally tend not to engage in discussion with those whose behavior is bullying and insulting. They are indeed looking for reasonable discourse, just as many atheists are simply looking for reasonable discourse.
And I think that's backed up by a lot of the conversations that we've had online of late, especially with theists. I tend to find that it's easier for me to break down the barriers of a theist, or at least a non-atheist of some description, by backing them up in something that they're saying. Oh, excuse me. The beer's going right through me. But like having the conversation, and then they suddenly realize, you're not one of those bullying atheists. You're not trying to ridicule me. You're interested in a conversation. You actually understand the burden of proof or epistemic justification. Fair enough, we disagree about our belief in God, but let's have a conversation about the things that we do agree on. And then at some point in the future, maybe we will have a discussion about deities, and maybe they will listen to my thoughts, maybe I'll listen to their thoughts. But the fact of the matter is, I've actually had a reasonable discourse with them.
Yeah. And that's the thing. It's because you're stepping outside of your in-group to say, well, look, hang on a second. Just because he's in your out-group doesn't mean that he's worthy of mockery. Will, in some sense, get them to think, okay, well, this guy isn't just, in-group, out-grouping. He's looking to step outside that. And that will create a sort of bare respect. And I mean, there are plenty of theists looking for decent discussions. Think of somebody like Max Mills, for example.
He's great. He's one of my favorite theists to chat to as well.
Yeah.
I loved his comment, and Chris brought this up the other day when we did our second recording of the ontology video, which unfortunately failed again. where Max actually said, I never actually have to make a claim about my belief in God, because the average internet atheist jumps on and making so many claims before they even understand what my particular beliefs are, that the burden of proof is completely on them.
Yeah.
It's true, but he's a very bright guy, and to be honest, I love to talk to theists like him more than I do the average internet atheist.
Same. I mean, I'd rather talk to Max than somebody like Ted Kate or Darth Dawkins. You know, I kind of lump lots of the average internet atheists in with those Sci-10 sort of people, where it's just not conversations that I enjoy having.
It's a heuristic monological form of dialogue, isn't it? It's just trying to teach you in generally an overly aggressive way, where they're being incredibly snobby and snooty, rather than actually, oh, you know what, let's have a discussion and try and find some truth in what we believe.
Yeah. And that's just not my type of conversation, to be honest. Okay, so carrying on. This is something that we should use to our advantage. We should be using to our advantage. By creating and reinforcing slogans such as ridiculous beliefs deserve ridicule, we immediately alienate those we should be having reasonable discourse with. We earn no respect from those we should be seeking to gain the respect of when we lead with the idea that we will ridicule what they believe, especially when we factor in some of the stereotypes and ideas that many believers already hold of the atheist.
Again, that's another thing, isn't it? Like, so many believers have this idea that we are evil, and if we are overly aggressive and, you know, demonstrate bullying behaviors, all it does is back up that stereotype.
Exactly. And think of it sort of like in an induction kind of way. I know it's not reasonable to believe that the next instance of some occurrence will turn out exactly the same. But let's face it, we all do make that kind of inference. The sun has risen for the last 365 days, so we assume that it's going to rise for the day after. Even though we might not have good reason to assume that, we do assume that.
Yep.
And so, you know, why do we expect the theists to be any different, especially if we're already going in there with the mindset that they're going to be unreasonable? Well, if we're going to assume that they're going to believe the most unreasonable thing, then feeding into that will just sort of circle it. And this is basically what I bring up next. When we enter into a conversation with many believers, the non-believer is already confronted by certain prejudices and stereotypes. Oh, I'm sorry. Ideas such as the angry atheist, or the atheists are arrogant, or they are atheists simply because we do not want to behave, and much more. You know, that's the usual. Oh, you just want to sin. You're just an atheist because you want to sin.
Yeah, I've heard that one so many times. Those are ones that I find generally turn me off the conversation when I hear phrases like that, in the same way that there are certain phrases that I hear from atheists as well that generally turn me off to the conversation. I find the atheistic ones generally easier to address, but equally met with equal, oh, you're just a theist troll, or something like that.
Yeah, similar levels of dogmatism, just about different ideas.
Yep.
Many atheists will have come across this in some form at some point in their lives, especially if they are active in discussion and debate. We are also seen as irrational by many believers, as they believe that the rational conclusion is that God exists, and to believe otherwise is irrational. The Bible claims that those who do not believe in God are fools, and the Quran promotes the idea that we are less than cattle. Oop, cite sources. I obviously forgot to fill in the sources too. Oops.
It's only 5 years old. It's all right. You can get to it. You can get to it.
I can get around to it. Yeah, I'm a busy
like,
guy.
When a guy tells you he's going to get to it, you know, he'll get to it. Doesn't
No
matter how
need
many
to
years
fucking-
it's been.
Yeah, I don't need to bug him every 6 months to get it done. Okay. Yeah, it shows you I think I was in my second year undergrad when I wrote this. This means that even before entering into a conversation with many believers, they have a particular image of us, an image designed to impact the amount of respect that the believer has on first contact. In order to overcome this, we must show that these stereotypes do not hold weight, and that what they believe and what they have been taught to believe is a falsehood, that we are not angry and arrogant and foolish and immoral and less than animals, that we are indeed reasonable and rational people, and we are good people.
I mean, that's basically what I was saying earlier about how when I have a conversation with a theist and they realized I'm not the typical internet atheist, they suddenly open up and relax, and they're just like, okay, let's have a conversation, rather than be in that fight mode that we're at. The funny thing is, though, I find it a lot harder to get a fellow atheist to relax in the same way. Because there is so much charge, and they're so used to fighting the theist that when you say something that sounds similar to something a theist might say, for example, that morality is not wholly subjective, that value is not wholly subjective, all of a sudden they assume that you are a theist troll, and they're instantly against you because they think that you're a theist.
Yeah. And the other thing as well is, if they have this impression of you before they've met you and that you're going to be all these things, when you come in hot and prove all these things, then you prove that all their other beliefs are justified. Well, the Bible got this right. What else has it got right? Whereas if you come in and you kind of knock that stereotype down, then they're going to say, well, I've been taught this my whole life, and that was completely wrong. So it can open up a door to doubt about other things.
Yeah. I'm saving most of the comments for the end, but Leon's put one in there, and seeing as we're in between sections, I'm going to address it. He says, I really don't understand to this day why people who are atheists have such an issue with philosophical atheism. The easy answer is ego, but even then it makes little sense to me. I even had this the other day, when I was having a conversation. I think it was on Twitter, and someone turned, yes, it was the meme I posted about trying to bring reason to debate, and you had the philosophical atheist pushing the truck and the new atheists at the top not doing actually anything but thinking they're doing something. And the response I got was something like, they find philosophical atheists, it wasn't arrogant, but it was one of those sort of things. And my response to them is like, oh yeah, and you know, scientific evolution, equally the same, it's just a changing kind, right? And I'm like, what do you mean? It's like, yeah, exactly. There's that respect for science and not for the philosophy, and yeah.
And it does. It makes them lean one way or the other just based on that respect.
Yeah, definitely.
And because there's a lot of disrespect for philosophy, not only from within the sort of new atheist community, but from within some of the respected elders, I guess we could call them. Because they put philosophy down, those underneath them just kind of parrot it. Well, philosophy is useless, isn't it? It's all science, isn't it?
Yeah. I'm just having a quick look through my Twitter feed to find, see if I can actually find that exact response that happened. But here we go. There's the meme that I posted. Let's see if I can find the conversation. Obviously, I'm not going to name names because I'm really not out for naming and shaming. I'd rather address certain arguments that people make and turn around and, hopefully change your mind without ridiculing the person. Because as we've said, if I ridicule the person, it's going to it's going to turn them against me. So yeah, so this particular person said, "Oh man, I hate philosophical atheism. It's so pretentious." And I said, "Yeah, and scientific evolution too. We all know it's just a changing kind, right?" And that they like questioned it. It's like, "Yeah, I'm just poking fun." And I was just poking fun, but I was also making a point at that point in time. You're just like, oh, hey, Manny, nice to see you in the chat. We're most of the way through the article, and we will be addressing all the comments in just a moment. So if you've got any questions about changing your mind, it's cool. As soon as we get to the end of the article, I'm going to put things in to be right back for just a minute or two, and then we'll address everybody's questions. So if anybody's got any questions, get them into the chat. Alan, I will read out your incredibly long comment as well at the end of the article.
Yeah, I mean, we are almost done. It's not my usual standard of dissertation article level type.
Yeah,
as you can see, conclusion is right there on the screen. Okay, and I then go on to sort of quote something that you'll hear from a lot of atheists. "I will never respect religion. There will be those who will reply that they will never respect religion or religious beliefs or believers. However, this is not the point being made here. The point is not that we must respect these things, but instead that one of the key conditions to getting someone to listen to you is that they must respect you enough to actually listen to what is being said. If they do not respect a person enough to listen to them, then there is little chance that person will have the opportunity to get them to question their beliefs, or listen to their criticisms of their belief, or to listen to reasons why they do not hold the same belief. Therefore, if the goal is these things, then the approach used must be considered." Sorry, batteries have run out on my mouse, damn it. Always a technical glitch.
Yeah, but saying that, we actually haven't had you freeze at all for tonight.
No, it's been going pretty well.
What's going on? I'm worried. Things have actually gone well. In fact, the only fuck up was me having your mic muted at the beginning of the stream. So, wow. Yes, you're right, Leon. We shouldn't jinx it.
Okay, so, and in conclusion, this is not to say that all believers are approachable, or will listen, or will ever respect anyone that does not believe the same thing as they do. I mean, theoretically, there's atheists that are similar to this as well.
No, not just theoretically.
But the article is focusing on discussion with believers, so I didn't really go into that. But these people clearly exist, and the atheist active in discussion and debate will have come across these people on a regular basis. These people may or not be unreachable. However, it should be considered that even the most ardent of believers in particular ideologies have changed their mind when they have come across people who had certain extant qualities that made them consider their beliefs. I mean, a lot of the atheists who go on about ridiculing believers were once believers. And it wasn't ridicule that changed their mind. It was usually listening to people that they respected, listening to the science, or listening to counter-apologetics. So I don't know why they jump into this. Well, it's all about ridiculing them, isn't it? And I suppose it's a self-loathing thing projected onto somebody else.
Yeah, I mean, there are many parts to it that I can think about. I mean, if you have been so wrapped up in something that you suddenly realize is irrational, you're suddenly like, oh my god, I was so stupid. Why is everyone else so stupid still? I finally worked it out. Why can't they work it out? There's also asserting a bit of dominance in your new tribe, trying to maintain sort of, we're all here together. I think there's also people where they do look up to people such as Hitchens and Dillahunty and Ra, who do have that sort of rah sort of take on how they deal with people, and they almost go, yeah, I'm going to be like that because that's what a good atheist does. And you're like, no, that's not what a good atheist does. But, carry on. I think there's so many different factors that encourage this sort of behavior. And there are quotes from the King Atheist, like ridiculous beliefs deserve ridicule. And I mean, definitionally, yeah, something ridiculous is something deserving of ridicule. But I think it's a bit different with what you are trying to achieve. And who is to judge what actually is ridiculous enough to deserve ridicule? What are you comparing that against? If it's something that is obviously illogical, like making a claim that you can have water that isn't H2O, well, yeah, or that you can have a square circle, okay, yeah, those things are obviously ridiculous. Even then, maybe we shouldn't ridicule the person. We should try and help them understand why it is ridiculous. But when it's something like a deity, okay, yeah, we might perceive it as ridiculous, but only against our standard, and against their standard, they will see us as ridiculous. And when you've got no actual objective standard, like something that is completely illogical to compare it against, is it something that we can definitely say is ridiculous?
Exactly. And if your first jump is to ridicule because somebody believes something different or they said something that you think is a bit dumb, that's sort of like bringing a gun to a baby shower. Shooting the first person that says something that you don't like at the baby shower. That it just
or even more, shooting the person that says something that you do like.
yeah, it just seems like an overreaction, especially if your intent is to convince them not to believe in God or to convince them to adopt a different epistemological approach. I mean, how does give me your lunch money change anybody's minds?
Yeah, no, I'm with you there.
Okay, so only 2 paragraphs to go. However, to approach all believers as if they hold this mindset would be an error in judgment. For there are those who are willing to have polite discussions. There are also those that criticize others for similar reasons the atheist does, such as the exclusion and harassment of the LGBTQ plus community and the like. Just as the atheist community is diverse and is made up of many different ideas and beliefs, so too is the theist community. Some are not of the Abrahamic faith. These things should all be considered in our approach to discussion and debate and criticism. Just as we atheists are unfairly lumped together or faulty conclusions are made based on faulty premises, we must also not make the same mistake of theists. I mean, think of somebody like Randolph Rouser. He has internal criticisms for Christianity and other Christians. And then you have other Christians who's that chubby guy with the guns, and he was at the Capitol thing, and he's really loud. Josh something. I can't remember his name, but he's one of those idiot Florida style preachers who's just yelling down a camera. He was one of the ones that complained about Starbucks not having proper Christmas cups. So yeah, I mean, if you treat Randolph Rouser the same as you treat some kind of really nasty anti-gay preacher, you're not really helping the case any, because they are very different kind of people. And supporting Randolph Rouser is sort of supporting your own argument to some extent. And he is more likely to convince other Christians that maybe the Bible shouldn't be interpreted this way than somebody like Aaron Ra is going to. So if our goal is to get people to consider their beliefs carefully, or to understand our criticisms of their beliefs, or to listen to our questions, then our approach needs to be considered by each and every one of us. Our goals too need to be considered. And if our goal is the things that are mentioned here, then one of the main factors in even getting close to them is that we must have a minimum amount of respect from those we are in discussion with. Enough respect to actually get them to listen to us. Okay, and that's the end.
Yeah, no, I'm definitely in agreement with that. I mean, I think as I mentioned, this article was something that started to change my mind on you. I mean, I didn't even know you when I first read this article, but it made me go, maybe he's someone I should know. I think Alan originally brought you into Answers in Reason. We'd probably never had a conversation outside me maybe posting something dumb on Debate Faith. I don't know if you remember those days, but I don't really remember them. I'm just fairly certain I posted something dumb.
Everybody does. I do. I just can make my dumb sound a bit smarter using big words.
But even that, I think that there is, especially in the atheist community, there is definitely this attitude that we can't say something dumb. There are so many that are so tied up in the ego of being a super smart, rational atheist that, you know, they won't question this. They might have a particular goal. They might not be aware of what their goal really is and not be performing the way they should do to get there, but they will be certain that they're right no matter what, because they are an atheist, and atheist means you're a super smart, rational person. I think right now what we should do is I'm going to quickly put us in Be Right Back so that we can close off this and go back to normal, and then I will enter and answer any of the questions. And Alan, I'll read out your quote as well if you're still there. LB, I will also answer your questions. So if you give us just 1 or 2 minutes, we will get right back to you.
Nice one.
What am I gonna do today, man? Oh, give a bite a call. You guys have some great ideas what to do. Hey, yo, bud, what's up, man?
Yeah, man, what you saying, bro?
Yeah, how's it going, bro? How you feeling?
Lean.
Safe, me too, man, me too. I'm so bored out of my mind, though. We gotta hook up. Wait, what happened to you yesterday, man? I thought you were coming round.
I didn't do nothing much. In fact, you wanna know what I done yesterday? I'll rap that shit to you right now. You know, I open my eyes and what do I see? It's a big Jimmy Bifter staring back at me. I put it to my lips and the taste is sweet, and I heard my brothers rocking out to this beat. I closed my eyes, then rose from my seat, and I had to venture forth to find some lunch to eat. And I stopped off in their room and they looked at me. I'd forgotten my pants, you know, I thought I felt free. So after I recovered, then they passed me the zoo. I put on some pants and I had another 2. I grabbed up some munch and I gelled back my hair, and I went down to Oxford to check the girls there. But all I see was classic Christian and James, cause this
we're back in the room. Sorry about that. Beer went through me.
For a wank.
I'd have been much quicker if it was a wank. So I mentioned that I was going to get to the comments. One of them I'm going to read out of order, and it was from Martin, and it struggled me not to laugh and destroy what you were saying at the time. But he says he advocates getting guns to baby showers. Where else do you need them?
I do as well. Not just because of the antinatalism or anything.
Just for shits and giggles, baby. So
Exactly.
I mentioned that there were a number of questions, comments, things. Let's have I'm going to bring it into my field of view. So first one is from LB. It says, on topic, it would take for the atheist and theist to establish what evidence is for the either side, more so on the atheist because evidence is a broad term. So I get what you're saying there. This is something I've actually been debating with fellow atheists recently. Andy also joined in. He's I suppose we call him a friend of AiR. He doesn't write any articles, but he's been on our podcast and things like that. He's been joining in a couple of those discussions with me. So you have to ask yourself, what is evidence? Now, in its most simplistic form, evidence is something indicative of a conclusion. So whether it's information or facts or anything like that. Now, it doesn't necessarily make it good evidence. It doesn't make it strong evidence. It doesn't make it convincing evidence. It doesn't make it scientific evidence. But something that is indicative of a conclusion is evidence. So the Bible is evidence of the Abrahamic faith. The Quran is evidence of the Islamic faith. The Vedas is evidence of the Hindu faith. Now, we can already see an issue here where we've got 3 different holy books that seem to somewhat contradict each other and make different claims within them, or at least people make different claims about them. So from here, we can say, okay, maybe this evidence isn't necessarily good evidence. We can even look at the evidence and examine the claims within it, or that people make about things within it, and go, right, okay, well, this seems to contradict that, and this is historically inaccurate here, and there's nothing to support this bit, and so on and so forth. I mean, if you think about arguments like we brought up the other day, the evidential problem of evil, it sort of demonstrates that a claim of a God being a perfectly loving God, well, if we consider the evidential problem of evil, well, no, it can't be. So we then go, okay, we throw that bit out. Doesn't mean it wasn't evidence. It means it's evidence that we discount because of this particular argument. The problem, I think, that you will find with the average atheist on the internet, the evidence they want is scientific evidence. And it's really hard to get scientific evidence which examines the physical for something that is usually regarded as a completely metaphysical claim. You could maybe go and try and judge effects that they make, maybe try and judge the efficacy of prayer and things like that. But in general, with you can't have scientific evidence for something that isn't scientific. So that's one of the biggest reasons that theists and atheists are constantly talking past each other on that topic. Dave and I actually, it was many streams ago, back in the days where I think we were just going straight out of Discord and I had no clue what was going on. I pretend I do now. Where we were talking about what would we accept for evidence of a God, and it would have to be something so extraordinary. like a baby being born able to speak in every language and recount the particular holy book and explain all the things in the holy book, something like that we'd have to go, wow, okay, I cannot see any way this would happen if it wasn't for a god. And that would be something that would probably convince us that shit, you know what, we've been wrong in our atheism all this time. But equally, I don't think it's something that you'd get from a god, especially if you think about a more deistic claim of a god. Now, something like that, I don't think there's any way you could get evidence to support that particular claim. It's a very difficult one. Do you have anything to add to that, Dave?
Yeah, I think something that a lot of people forget as well is that in some regards, evidence is a very personal thing. It's a very subjective thing. I know lots of atheists, it's kind of weird. A lot of them will say such and such is subjective because two people disagree. They'll make arguments like that. If something was objective, think of morals, for example. Well, two people think different things about morality, therefore that's proof that morality is subjective. But they'll argue that evidence is testable and repeatable. They'll come up with all those kind of scientific definitions and say that anything else isn't evidence. So they don't apply that, well, two people disagree on what evidence is, so therefore evidence is subjective. But in a sense, it kind of is, because what might be evidence to me might not be evidence to you. And it depends on our experiences and how we define what evidence is. In certain technical circumstances, evidence might not be as subjective. But when it comes to actually internalizing it, there is a very much a subjective element to what would be considered evidence.
No, I agree there. I had a very similar conversation just before I came on stream tonight with someone who said that to them, their evidence for God was about their personal experience until they became an atheist and realized that was not evidence. And I said, well, hang on a minute. I think that your experience was evidence. It's not necessarily particularly strong evidence, and it's not going to be evidence that convinces anyone else, but it convinced you. So therefore it was indicative of a conclusion, and it convinced you. And I said, I gave a comparison of, if I experience something, say eating a chocolate bar, and I go, oh, yeah, I like that. That is evidence to me that I actually like that chocolate bar. But now that might not be evidence that Dave will like a chocolate bar. I mean, he does, but it's not necessarily going to be evidence that he does. So, it might pique his interest and go, well, maybe I should try the chocolate bar for myself, but it's not necessarily going to tell him that he will do it. So experience is a form of evidence. It's just not a particularly good form of evidence if you're trying to give it to someone else. A personal experience will not necessarily convince anyone else.
It's not necessarily transferable evidence.
Yes.
Which is what a lot of atheists seem to be declaring is the only form of evidence now.
Yeah. If it's not transferable, it's not evidence.
Yeah. You must be able to demonstrate it, repeat it, everything like that. Otherwise, it's not evidence. But that's not necessarily the case for what evidence is. It's a technical form of evidence, but not evidence in general.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. Oh, the comment from Alan was massive. Hopefully, LB, that answered your question. Let's go. Alan's comment. I've seen this question so many times in religious debate and discussion groups I have lost count. Is anyone closer to theism than when they first started having these discussions? How about closer to atheism? These may be good questions. I don't personally think so. And this may be even a sought-after goal for many people. But in my experience, if you can get someone to concede to your point of view on topics relating to religious beliefs, that is a very rare thing. And it might even bring some feelings of adoration for yourself. The few times that this happens, but this is a short-lived sensation. I think the real value in having these discussions is not swaying someone off their strongly held beliefs. The real value is how those on a different side of any argument can make you take a closer look at your own beliefs, to investigate deeper into what you believe and why you believe it. They can show you a new perspective or add the perspective of those on the outside looking in. Every time I post anything, I'm secretly hoping someone can and will point out the flaw in my thinking. Yes, including this post. So if someone's main purpose is to win the hearts and minds and to have them abandon long-held beliefs, I'm afraid they will ultimately be sorely disappointed. But if these interactions help you gain the understanding about those that believe differently than you, and if conversation causes you to take a deeper look with a new perspective into your own beliefs and opens your eyes to realization that we are all here for the purpose of understanding each other, then you have much to gain. That is where the real benefit lies, not simply trying to sway people. I think I will have an agreement that there is a benefit in trying to understand your fellow human. I think that the problem is most people are trying to convince someone else, but they're not doing it in the right way. I think if we all took more time trying to understand each other and building a good rapport and having dialectic conversations with each other, then the changing of minds would happen without us actually trying to make it happen.
It would be organic.
Exactly. So yeah, I agree with most of what you say there.
But also, isn't he trying to change our mind with that argument?
2LT's got mad at your meme. What? Oh, Lactheists. That was when we were discussing the meme. That it was actually Manny's meme that I posted. I didn't even know it was his originally. And yeah, so that was actually Manny's meme. That's a brilliant one that you actually did. Yeah. So credit to you. If I'd known it was yours, I think I just saw it on the GDC or something like that. But yeah, dude. Yeah, sorry for not crediting you when I actually put it.
He's a sharp guy, Manny. I really like him.
Yeah. If any of you are on Twitter and are not following him, you really should. And if you don't know who I'm talking about on Twitter, send me a DM and I'll send you him.
Same with Philip and Leon and Josh and
LB.
They're all worth following.
Definitely. Oh, Josh is saying that he's just done his back and bi workout. Good on you, Josh. I've actually taken a different method with my workouts recently. I'm trying to do. I always craft my own workouts about different stuff that I've learned and things that I've been thinking, oh shit, I haven't done this for a while. And I'm finally at a point where I'm losing the baby weight again. So I'll send a couple of the workouts over to you if you so wish. They're very intense workouts, but they only take 30 to 40 minutes. So if you want to find yourself almost throwing up by the end of 30 or 40 minutes, but only having to do them about 3 days a week, maybe 4, then yeah, let me know. Oh, and you know that game that we were playing, Josh, Altered Titan? You can now sync your tracker to it, so my Garmin tracker automatically goes to it now. So I'm back playing. I got really bored of having to enter everything manually, but now that I've found out that it auto syncs, I'm back in. We should still start a clan. Leon, very refreshing to hear about better ways to communicate with people. Yeah, I hope that we have provided something that will help you in your interactions. And not only that, it reinforces it for at least me, if not you as well, Dave. I think I constantly need to remind myself about interacting with people in the right way. It's very easy to get caught up in a load of bullshit, and eventually someone keeps pushing, and I do snap, and I become the arsehole that I tell people not to be. And it's usually fellow atheists that get that rise out of me, not theists or anything like that. It's actually usually the internet lacktheist. I find them probably more irritating than anyone else. Welcome back, LB. Sorry, carrying on. So, yeah, Leon mentions when someone told him that all unscientific claims are void and not worth investigating. Tell that to historians. Yeah, no, that's exactly it. I mean, history works in a very, very different way, especially when you go to ancient history. Like we had the conversation with Tim O'Neill, who has launched his channel now. So make sure you check him out because he's fucking awesome.
He's amazing.
He definitely teaches a lot of history to atheists because we atheists have a lot of faulty understandings of history. But obviously history isn't as scientific. It does work on a consensus of historians. They all look at all the evidence that there is, and sometimes there isn't much. And they basically have a mass consensus and strip out some of the other stuff, and you're left with something. That's why it's generally believed that there was a historical Jesus, not a mythological Jesus, not the... I hate to use the term, but the magic Jesus with, you know, all of those magic abilities, but it's generally believed that there was an apocalyptic preacher that the character was based on due to the evidence and some of the extra biblical evidence. Again, it's a different kind of evidence. Not only scientific evidence is what we can base beliefs on. I mean, consider any of you out there that have got a partner. The best you've got is inductive reasoning about the way they behave. Now, they could be faking the way they behave, but you're not going to every second of the day have a lie detector on them and be scanning their hormonal response to you and things like that just to make sure they definitely do love you. You don't always need scientific evidence for everything.
Yeah. When your kid steals from the cookie jar, you don't use a DNA test to see if they did it or not. You use other clues.
Good analogy. If we became theists, what kind would we be? Interesting. I quite like Norse mythology. I quite like aspects of the Hindu faith. I suppose the more simplistic answer is some form of secular theist. It depends. I think the only thing that would really convince me is you know, like I was saying, something demonstrable. So it would have to be something, and to be honest, I'd follow whatever gave me enough of a demonstration to convince me. Doesn't matter what it is, but I think I need that demonstration. Even if I did become a theist of a particular deity, it does not necessarily mean I would worship it without further clarification of some of the morals that I perceive to be immoral and things like that. What about you, Dave?
Okay, this is kind of a tricky question because there's a couple of parts to it. If I was to become a theist, it would mean I would be convinced by some kind of evidence. So whatever evidence it was that convinced me would determine what kind of theist I would be. But off the top of my head, it would most likely be something more like pantheism that would convince me. In that, the universe is God or something along those lines. Or possibly something like panpsychism, where consciousness is fundamental to the universe. A mix of those kind of ideas, where it's still very much physicalist and materialist based. It's just a different sort of lens of looking at the universe through.
Interesting you mentioned that. I was fantasizing the other day, and I didn't see this necessarily as a type of God, but I was thinking about the universe as a biological system, and that we are just parts of the system and the planets and everything like that. And it was, the way planets move around certain things is basically the blood flow around the system. I wasn't even high at the time. I was just like in a sort of daydream state, fantasizing about this particular sort of thing. I don't know if that is the same sort of thing as any of the current pantheistic ideas, but it would sort of fit a form of pantheism.
Yeah.
But yeah. So Ortanglo says, that's Darth Dawkins, isn't it? Or is that someone else?
Different.
No. Oh no, Evolution Force was Ortanglo. Darth Dawkins. Sorry,
Yeah.
Ortangelo says, atheists must be able to explain how chance has more creative power than intelligence, able to instantiate systems more complex and sophisticated than anything ever invented by man. Okay, so if we were to take a particular thing like evolution, let's say, for example, that there are only 1 million different combinations of DNA in organisms. And let's say only 2 of them are actually viable. So the rest of that 1 million are discounted, but those 2 happen to survive. So all that randomness, most of it was thrown out. But you've got that 2. Now those 2 over time start having other mutations, and they make 1 million each. So all of a sudden we've got 2 million different strands of DNA, and both of them end up having 2 each that are viable. So from there, we've suddenly got 4 viable strands. And again, this happens over and over and over again. So you've got this randomness over a massive amount of time, seemingly coming into order. But that's just because with something like life, the life that doesn't work dies. That is just one idea of how you can explain randomness coming into order. That obviously isn't necessarily what this stream is about, so I don't think we should go into that one too much at that point. But if you would like a discussion about it in the future, I'm sure we can have a discussion. Manny wants God in a test tube, but a beaker would be sufficient.
Now I want to watch the Muppet Show.
That sounded like one of Katie's farts. Martin, I believe science has done a lot of work in that regard. Yeah, I was giving a very easy to understand explanation. If you actually look into the science, it will give you a much better explanation than I did just then. I was just trying to give you a very simplistic understanding of it. Leon wants God's blood type. It'd be G.
OMG negative.
So Altangelo says the simplest free living bacteria is the Plegobacter unique. It is around. Hang on, I need to count my zeros. Sorry, I'm dyslexic, so this is hard for me. About 1.2 million base pairs. The chance to get the sequence randomly is massive. It's a massive number, and there are however many stars in the whole universe. Okay, Otanglo, I've actually done an article about the mathematical improbability of you. So I used averages of the number of sperm produced, the number of eggs people have, how many times people have sex and masturbate, and things like that. And I will get you that article. And it's incredibly improbable that you would have been born. So just because something is improbable doesn't make it impossible. And I think this is actually a really terrible argument, because over a large amount of time, pretty much anything is possible. So let me just see if I can find that article for you, and I will post that in the chat. Do you have anything to add to that, Dave?
Yeah. Statements like this make me kind of curious as to what the qualifications are, as to how they understand the universe well enough at a fundamental level to know what these odds are. Like, most scientists don't really know the universe that well.
No, that's incredibly true. It's one of the issues that we brought up with one of the theories of knowledge, verificationism, in the sense that if we were to say all things are made of atoms, but actually our knowledge of all things is this in comparison to the entire universe, we don't actually have enough information under verificationism to even judge that, which is why you have to default to a different theory of knowledge, everything that we know about rather than everything. So yeah, I mean, yeah, Otanglo, you may be able to explain the odds. Check out that article and have a look at the odds. I spent a lot of time on the math, working it out in Excel. I also, after spending forever on the article, I went to a few mathematicians and said, can you check my working on this? And they agreed that my math was correct. Now, I'm not a mathematician, so I trust what they say on the math that I did, and I've linked the references to where I got my averages off of. Now, I even included the spreadsheet, so you can alter things like that as well within it. And it will show you that how improbable any human is who they are the way they are. So, yeah.
Yeah, and the odds don't really take into account how the universe functions. Just the odds of certain combinations being necessary, the chance of those combinations coming together. But without knowing how the universe functions, you can't feed the numbers into those chances, because perhaps it would always be that way because of the way the universe functions.
Yeah, I suppose there's also the argument from if someone takes a purely physicalist stance, then actually all the odds are just one, because that is what would have always happened.
Yeah, or take a determinism route.
Yeah. I sort of link physicalism and hard determinism as pretty much the same thing. I know they're talking about different things, but I don't see how someone can be one without the other.
They're correlated, yeah.
Yeah. But perhaps that's an error in my part for actually doing that without being explicit. So, yeah. So apparently you managed to read my article in 40 seconds and it doesn't refute your point. I can't read that fast, but well done.
That sort of reminds me of something I saw recently. A theist asked an atheist if they'd ever read the Summa Theologica, and they said no. And then 5 minutes later came back and said, okay, I've just read the whole of the Summa Theologica, which is a rather large book. You could probably read one of the arguments from it in a very brief way in 5 minutes, but there's no way you're reading the Summa Theologica in 5 minutes. It'd be like saying I read The Lord of the Rings in 5 minutes.
Yeah. There's even worse people like that. I mean, there's a few lactheists that I know that claim to be able to know the content of an article just by reading the headline.
Yeah.
I mean, headline culture is annoying. You see it everywhere. People respond to an article, and you can really tell whether they've actually read the article. We've done a few ourselves, and I mean, one of the first ones that I tried to test this out on was an article called "Why Do Christians and Muslims Reject Evolution?" And in the first line of the first paragraph, it qualifies that it's some, but all the responses I got were, not all of them do, not all of them do, not all of them do. And it was like, yeah, I know. Try reading the article. It tells you that. And it's absolutely ridiculous. But yeah, so if you manage to read the entire article in 40 seconds, I'm very impressed, especially with all the different bits of math that go into it. Well done.
I read fast, and even I couldn't read that fast.
No,
and Joe knows how fast I can read.
Yeah, no, it's annoying. You can probably read about 10 articles in the time it takes me to read a couple of paragraphs, and even then you couldn't read that entire paragraph. Leon, don't worry. Algebra actually was one of those things that I back in the day had a bit of an affinity for. Being dyslexic, I've always struggled with the words, which is quite funny considering I read articles out live on air. And I'm a blogger. I mean, what an idiot I am. But algebra was one of those things where, I don't know if you ever did like things like simultaneous equations and things like that, but I could see the answer. It was really weird. It would go up on the board and I know what the answer is without doing the working. Now I can't do that anymore. I've spent far too much time rotting my brain. But it was just one of those things that I could just see. More advanced equations, obviously, I had to spend the time working my way through it. But everybody has different strengths and weaknesses, and don't worry if you actually have an issue with something like algebra. I mean, why are we putting letters in math anyway? Fucking people.
So that we could create coding in the 80s.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, Angelo, I mean, the origin of life is still one of those things that is largely a massive mystery. There are plenty of good hypotheses that all seem to make sense. There's a good TED talk from, I can't remember his name, but if you look up the distinction between non-life to life, where he's showing cells that are not regarded as alive, acting as if they're life, and they're a stage before something would become as life. So there's plenty of different theories. The fact of the matter is we don't have a definitive answer on that yet. But what we can say is pretty much everything that has been regarded as a supernatural claim in the past has now been explained through natural means. There has never been an example of something that we thought was natural that was suddenly, oh, actually, yeah, it's clearly God did it. So if you go by probability and you like your math, go that way. So pretty much everything that was once thought supernatural has now been explained naturally.
And here's the other thing, okay? Arguing that life needs a creator, life needs a designer, all this couldn't have come about by chance. you then have to give a logical and coherent description of the thing that created the universe. So that's what you need to do now. You can argue all these things all you like, but in order to convince somebody that something created it, you're going to have to be able to give an actual coherent definition of that creator. And that's where your trouble is.
Not to mention, we were just having a long discussion about how when changing a mind, respect matters. And your answer was, I get your point, I dealt with it, that's why I don't have to read your entire article. That's not showing respect. That's not going to endear me or any of our viewers to you and your point. It's showing a form of arrogance, like you feel that you're better than all of us. So realistically, if you've come here to try and convince anyone, you're not going to do that. I mean, maybe you missed the entire conversation beforehand. I suggest reading Dave's article on how changing a mind and respect matters. Now, Dave's article was mostly focused on atheists and how they should behave if they want to change theists' minds. But it can go the other way. If a theist wants to try and change an atheist's mind, they have to behave a little bit better than you have in the chat just now. So there you go. Yeah, the rest of it is just more claims on that. So no factory has ever built itself, blah blah blah. Okay, yeah. You carry on chatting away.
I just refer to David Hume for that.
Yes, Martin, it was all your fault for responding to him.
Yeah. Because he hasn't been here the last 3 weeks making the same comments over and over about materialism.
I genuinely suggest that you go back to the drawing board, and if you want to engage people in a rational conversation, try and behave a little bit better yourself and engage people on a level, and just try and work together to actually find a truth. No, Martin, it wasn't really your fault. You were just having a laugh, but I will blame you. Yes, Josh, you're right. We have our first troll. Do you know what? It's been a while, actually. I haven't been called a theist troll in almost a month now. I even made a joke about it a couple of weeks ago, and it still hasn't happened. I don't know what I'm doing. But yeah.
Yeah, I did notice a comment from Manny earlier.
Oh, did I miss
where
it?
He said he takes his cookies seriously. Yeah. Which would be about the DNA comment. I agree, which is why I said that we would use different means. Now, I take my cookies very seriously too, as you can see by my belly. I wouldn't use DNA. I would go all Spanish Inquisition on that child's ass. Torture him until he admits that he has the cookies, and I can put him out in the streets to work to get me more cookies.
Even if he never actually took the cookies in the first place.
All that counts is I get more cookies.
I like Manny's most recent comment as well. A banana fits perfectly in my hand, so that means an intelligent mind wanted it to fit. Yeah. Yep. Ray Comfort. Fucking hell.
That gives me comfort. Yeah.
I don't know if did I send them to you when I did a couple of jokes videos of Ray Comfort and Ken Ham and even Richard Dawkins. I was taking the piss out of all the big names at the time.
Not that I can remember. No.
I tell you what, I will send them to you. I might even put them up in you know how we don't have a proper intro video. I might do a little playlist of dumb shit that I've done in the past, just as an intro for us.
Yeah.
Or maybe when we go on Be Right Back, we can have a little video for people to watch rather than just a song playing or something like that. If there's no other questions, though, I think that really ties off our discussion tonight about how changing a mind and respect matters. And we had a brilliant example right at the end of it. If you've been following the chat as well, you'd have seen more of the comments than we've actually said out loud about how someone didn't have the respect that we were just talking about and how it instantly turned us off to engaging in the rest of the discussion. So next time you're out there and you're trying to have a discussion with someone, whether it's a theist or an atheist or an agnostic or a different ontological position, and you're trying to convince them whether they're wrong or that you're right, whatever you're trying to do, just remember, respect matters.
Yeah.
Do you have anything else you want to add tonight, Dave?
Nope, that was perfectly poignant and a great way to end.
Fantastic. Well, hey, I got something right as well. That's it for the week. So I guess that's it. That's the end of our stream tonight. We will obviously be trying to continue on Tuesdays and Thursdays around 8 p.m. GMT. Though we may be a little bit later depending on Dave's schedule. But if you are interested in music, on the days when Dave is running late, I will nearly always have a mix. And if I've got time on the other days, I'll have a mix first. So if you like the music, come and join in and have a laugh with us. You've been listening to the Fresh Air Sci-Fi stream. Thank you, absolutely everybody that listened and joined in live, and also anyone that's catching the reruns or any of the little highlights. I hopefully will see you next Tuesday. Good night.
Good night, all. Good night.